I hope you have enjoyed so far, looking back to the past 70 years. Now, we are trying to do an attempt to look forward to the next 70 years with our second panel, which is titled An IAF Spaceflight to 2091. And for this panel, I'm very pleased to announce that the IAF President, Professor Pascal Ehrenfreund, will be the moderator. So I'm pleased to hand over to Pascal.
Okay. I hope that all our speakers are already in the room because the doors are getting closed. Yeah, otherwise we need some volunteers, yeah? So, dear participants, we have seen a lot of videos, we remembered the past. You have heard the past presidents speak about the evolution. But of course, we want really to look into the future. And as Christian said, we have anticipated what will be the next 70 years for the International Astronautical Federation. And I think it is important because what we see in the last decades that the space sector is vibrant, it is dynamically evolving, public and private sector. There is record private investment. We have a lot of entrepreneurs entering the scene. We have, I think, in the last 10 years, over 1,700 space startups funded all over the world. So it is really, really a very vibrant place, and the evolution goes much faster than in the previous decades. And we have to look, how do we keep pace with this environment? And also space is a component of our daily life, and it integrates more and more with other economies. So all that we have to anticipate in the future. So, and that's why we also try to do a different scheme today. And you see these beautiful pictures from the graphic artists. It's like a mixture of all the movies which we have seen in the last decade. And we want to ask some questions and want to look at the future in this panel, which is called An IAF Spaceflight to 2091. And we want to speculate and to challenge some of our distinguished speakers and experts here today. We want to know, will international cooperation continue to play an important role? I think we know all the answer of that, but what will be the role of space agencies and industries in the future? How do we successfully educate the next generation in this interdisciplinary environment? How will we successfully integrate emerging and developing countries? So there are many, many questions, and what we are doing today is that we want to stimulate the conversation. We have paired our speakers and asked them to focus their discussion on different aspects. And each pair will be composed of a young professional and a senior expert. And allow me to introduce you to our 4 pairs of speakers, and then may I ask you then that you also come on stage. The first pair is composed of Deganit Bajkowski. She's the IAF Vice President for Diversity Initiatives, Science and Academic Relations, and lecturer at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And Davide Padrillo, IAF Vice President for Education, Workforce Development, and Executive Director of the Space Generation Advisory Council. I think you have to sit here and here. The second pair is composed of Clay Mowry, the incoming IAF President and Chief Revenue Officer at Voyager Space Holdings, and Chiara Cocchiara, recipient of the 2021 IAF Young Space Leader Award and System Operation Engineer at EUMETSAT. Thank you very much for joining us. This third pair is composed of Josef Aschbacher, Director General of the European Space Agency, and Elizabeth Barrios, recipient of the 2021 IAF Young Space Leader Award and Structural Materials Engineer at NASA. I'm sorry. I'm afraid I have to sit here in the middle between you. So, and the fourth and otherwise I can sit on the floor. Yeah? The fourth and final pair is composed of Maria Antonietta Perino, former IAF Vice President and Director for Space Economy, Exploration and International Networks at Thales Alenia Space. Yeah, it's very long. Sorry. And Pierre Alexis Schumel, recipient of the 2021 IAF Young Space Leaders Award and Director for International and News Business Space System at Airbus Defence and Space Germany. So this will be exciting, yeah. And we also said, you know, we give you a lot of freedom to discuss, and you can definitely disagree, yeah, because then it is also more lively, and this is probably necessary. So what we will do is that each pair will have about 10 minutes to bring us knowledge about their perspectives, and then we will conclude with a session where you can ask questions from the audience. And I want to turn it to you now, dear speakers, and want to ask you, how do you see the future or the next 70 years of the International Astronautical Federation? And I think you are the first pair which is going to start, and here is your microphone. Thank you.
It works? Yes, it works. Okay. So we are the first. We have the privilege, exactly. So, Beganit, for me, really, it's an amazing experience to be in front of you as a really senior expert, not only with the Federation, but also with your professional experience. So, I wanted to ask you, how do you see the future of space in the next 70 years?
Thank you, David. And I wanted to ask you, because I think out of the whole audience here, you have the best chances of actually living and seeing what it actually is. So maybe we can send you to the future and you can come back and tell us what happened, and then we can just get off the stage and get done with it. But I want to speculate and I want to imagine. When I was sitting there and listening to the previous presidents of the IAF, I couldn't help but imagine that in 70 years, we'll have the first IAC in space. So what do you think that will look like? Christian, you can start planning that.
That's honestly an extremely inspirational view.
But what do we need to do in order to get there?
In order to get there, definitely my point of view is to make sure that we can consider the inspirational point of view. So as you said, we see the future of IAF in space, you know, the next IAF in space in the 70 years, but definitely the important point to consider is how can we provide this inspirational opportunity to our experts that we have here in front of you, but not only, like for our students and young professionals, because I really think that in order to arrive at the IAF in 70 years, to make the next IAC in space, we have to start from now. We have to start from now and consider our students and young professionals to be already involved in the current activities that we are doing together with the experts, to get inspirational ideas from them, and then develop the future of the Federation and also have the next IAC, the future IAC in space in 70 years.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think what we have in common when we're together on the Bureau is advancing the 3G values, and I think that if we're looking at that, then space is really diversified, and in order for us to materialize and accomplish what we are visioning to the future, I think we have to expand a little bit our vision about how we educate young leaders, how we educate young professionals and students. And I think that over in the last few years, we are all very much biased towards STEM education. And not that I don't think that that is important, but if we want to see a space economy, some refer to that as a cislunar economy, to materialize in a few decades from now, then we need not only experts on STEM education, but we need experts on all the aspects of space, meaning legal experts and policy experts and commercial experts and all, even culture, which was mentioned before, and economy, of course. So I think we need to encourage leaders in our countries not to focus only on advancing STEM education and not leaving behind all the other topics as well.
I agree, and definitely, honestly, other ideas that I wanted to share with you that I have in mind are also related to some challenges that we are currently facing, but we have to also to consider that in the next 50 to 70 years, we will maybe have to face this challenge much more, that is, for example, the climate change. So what is going to be the situation from a climate change perspective? I remember with my job, as well as the SGSC Executive Director, I was reading some essays from our members talking about the concept of the climate change. How do they see it, no? And it came up, I remember just really a particular essay in which they were saying, that New Space is currently analyzing, lots of data for the climate change, but on the other hand, they keep it by themselves instead of sharing this maybe with governmental institutions, intergovernmental institutions. So in order to make a whole database, and make sure that we can cooperate all together. So with this, for me, it was something that was extremely inspirational. And what can the Federation do to support, facing the challenges? And we know that next year we will have in Norway the GLOC 2023. That could be the first step to say, okay, why don't we make workshops? Why don't we make activities to have our students and young professionals involved and provide not only concrete ideas, but also inspirational ideas on how we can face these challenges all together, also with space integrated to it. So just an additional example.
Good. And well, taking up on that, I think that when we're thinking ahead, so we need this kind of current inspirations and future inspirations as well. So thinking about how do we solve current challenges and also start to visualize future challenges that we may have. And so when we're thinking about future economy, not in space, so not just visualize the technology, but also visualize the social mechanisms or the social technology that we also need to expand on in order to actually materialize and facilitate the technology itself. What will be the social mechanisms to use new technologies? How will economy look like when we expand and live in space? I think we don't give enough attention to the challenges that we'll face in a few decades. So for the next years of the IAF, I think we need to focus on how we do better with current challenges that we have and with what we'll face when we reach space. And I think we're almost done with our time.
Almost, I guess. I don't know if we have
Yeah, you have 2 more minutes.
That's great.
Okay.
So we have time.
You still did not explain how it will actually happen that we have an ISC in space. So we have to work towards that.
Well, I think we need to start providing scholarships to fly to space, and we have Clay here who can help us with that. So this will be the first step.
No, but honestly, I mean, that's a really great question again, and definitely we should consider about, flying our members to space.
A winner every year.
Sorry?
A winner, one winner every year.
And one winner every year, exactly. But definitely, really, what I wanted to say here to maybe conclude for, our today's speech is really coming back to the fact that the Federation is really the enabler to make sure that we arrive in a situation in which the future is really composed by the young people at the moment. So, but not only, because all the experts that we have here in front of you need the input from us, from the young people, to make sure that then we can see the future of the Federation and the future in space for the next 70 years. And this is something that I would like to see as a dream as well, how do we see the young people at the moment currently involved within this type of activities with the Federation, and make sure that our ideas, our inspirational ideas are given to experts like you all. So
If I just want to say something, what I always see when we are at the ISC, that you have this natural way of knowledge transfer. And that when the young space leaders and all the young people that come also on fellowships, they are so excited because everybody makes time. Everybody in the IAF community, whatever rank and whatever country, is actually available. And that's what they are always proudly, state, and they are very, very happy to come. So I think this is something what the IAF stands for, but of course we have to continue to, this knowledge transfer is really, really something which is very important. Yeah, and great, you did applause for the couple number one. And now it is Clay and Chiara.
Okay, well, I think the answer is we fly people on the IAF spaceship. That's how we get. No, but seriously, it's an interesting question to go to the moon, to go to Mars, and I think that 4 years ago you participated in an analog on the ground experiment. You trained and as you were living on Mars. So talk a little bit about that and where we could be 70 years from now. Where do you think we go?
Yes, thank you for the question, Clay. It's interesting because now we are imagining what can happen in the future. And with that experience where I simulated life on Mars, I feel like I had the opportunity to take a trip into the future and to see what it will really be like to be on Mars. And clearly, from a personal perspective, it was a dream come true. But from a professional point of view, I had that feeling that I think many people here share, and it's the one that with our small contribution, we are building the future of the space sector. We are building the development of the space sector. And despite the issues that we are having today, unfortunately, I really see and continue to see space like a place for worldwide cooperation. And now with the IAF, this is very clear. We have talked many times already today about the number of members that grew over time. And this is an important sign because we see that there is the will of participating to this field. But something important is that indeed we are talking now about new space, we are talking about space economy, and what we are seeing is a transformation of the approach to space. At the beginning, we had the big space agencies that were cooperating between them. But now we have a different approach. We have public and private working together. We have big companies and startups working together. We have old generation and young generation working together. And most important, space, it's not anymore like a standalone field, right? So when we talk about space, now we talk about agriculture, we talk about medicine, transportation. So we really see that we have a benefit that is taken from space to each of us, even to those that do not really know how beneficial it is using space technologies for our days. And okay, we are labeled like the new generation, but I'm already carrying with me the future new generation, and I really believe that one way or another, the world will be led by the space field. And yes, Clay, talking about the space economy and the approach, the future that we are taking in, towards the space sector, what do you think about this? What will be the transformation? What will be the future as we see it?
Sure. And Christian, I think we need to get the finance committee to start investing, perhaps, if we're going to have the spaceship, start now. Some Monday, so maybe some cryptocurrency, I don't know what. Yeah. So no, but to your point, I mean, last year we saw some landmark missions. We saw New Shepard 16, we saw Inspiration 4 launched on the Resilience Dragon and on RSS First Step. These were really incredible missions because it showed exactly this transformation to purely private commercial space flight, that it is a reality. I'm now proud to know many of my friends are now astronauts. It's incredible to me. that people that are my colleagues, my contemporaries, have now flown. Sarisha Bandla and Audrey Powers, and soon Gary Lai is on the next flight of New Shepard, a dear friend of mine, which is fantastic just to imagine. I couldn't have thought for myself that this would have been the case. We see private astronauts going, but not on government-sponsored ships, really, on purely commercial ships. So we've got some things to progress on, to build on this point. And we talk a little bit about this economy and building the infrastructure around it and buying space as a service. This is the new kind of mantra, buying space as a service, which, by the way, is a fundamental, by the way, space agencies have been buying space as a service for a long time, but now really it's something different because you're talking about capability for orbital flight. And this is, I think, something that maybe Dennis Tito led the way in some ways years ago, but now we see something that's really, as commercial ventures, we're trying as a company now, Voyager, that I'm with, to build investment, to go out and actually attract private money, to be able to build a private space station, to put people into orbit and beyond. It's really something incredible that the financial community is able to think about and be interested in this. And so you can think about now, 20, 30 years from now, when it is even more mature technology, that we can build on top of this. And it's not just the human space flight, the cargo and crew access. I mean, we're talking about manufacturing. We're talking about, at its core, doing scientific research, material sciences, in situ resource utilization. We're talking about building on material sciences and really building an entire ecosystem that can work. So not just one that's led by governments, but one where commercial is at the forefront. It's going to take us a little bit to get over that, right? I mean, the governments are still probably the biggest drivers in this area, and space. I don't want to confuse that. I mean, space as a domain, the science and national security aspects are still very, very important, will continue to be important, I think, for the future going forward. But for commercial companies to be able to have the discussions we're having now is something really quite incredible. In my lifetime and 30 years working in space, it's something amazing that I've come to see a change. And so I think 70 years from now, we'll see for sure, maybe 10,000 people, Moon, Mars, holding an IEC. Why not? Why not?
You guys have still?
How many
still
minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay, so we have 2 minutes.
I mean,
Okay.
if you still want to continue. Yeah.
So tell me, though, to go back to this analog before, what was the hugest challenge if we're going to have an IEC on Mars? What was the biggest, for you, the biggest issue that you encountered during this exercise?
Apart from the logistics.
Yeah, okay.
That would be quite difficult. I think when we talk about space and the humans in space, we do not need to forget the human part of it. So the psychological aspect of going to space is clearly one of the key factors when we look at being isolated there. Clearly, if we have an IAC in space with 1,000 of people, will not be the case because we will be all together. But still, we are talking about staying away from the families, go out of our comfort zone. Because want it or not, when we live on Earth, we have our usual habits, we have our way of working, of talking with other people. If we go to space, then you are alone there. You need to have trust in your teammates. You need to build the trust from your teammates towards you, because you need to work as a team. And again, this brings me to the idea of cooperation that we have in space. We cannot do anything alone. We see it also in our daily lives, in our jobs. Each of us have one role in the team, but we work as a team. And I think this is what is fundamental in space and what needs to always be replicated and grow in space. And if you allow me one last point regarding the future, I think education is really a key element here as well. And education not from a traditional point of view, but educational in the way that we need to think big. When we talk about entrepreneurship today, we see many new young startups that come into the field. And we have people that come from a specific background, but they build something bigger. They go out of, again, their comfort zone, and they are able to transform and to shape a better future for space. And this connects exactly with the concept of space economy that you mentioned. So do you think that also in the future education will play an even more important role, and that we need to transform education in order to improve what we have today, or a traditional education is enough? What do you think?
No, for sure we're going to have to transform education. I think we've seen this across the board, that we're educating people today with a system, with a framework that's maybe more than 100 years old. And if we're going to go to have an IC on the moon or Mars, we're really going to have to transform that. And I completely agree with you. We go together. We can't, there's no one country, I think, this is going to do this alone. It has to be together. Okay.
Good, wonderful. We are going to transfer the... yeah, and then we have another one which goes at the very end. Thank you. Thank you. So thank you very much for your considerations, and I think there is another aspect which is clear. The IAF is actually the only organization worldwide which really integrates all the different space stakeholders. And this is something which then allows, to build this ecosystem, space innovation system. We can foster this multi-stakeholder approach in an organization, I think, very well, and it will be an important challenge for the future. And now I'm going to the other side. And there is ESA and NASA. Yeah? Joseph and Elizabeth. Yeah. Yeah. You're the grand finish.
Okay. So I kind of want to take things over to a more technical aspect. And we've seen, in the last, decade or so, the growth of space being involved in climate research, understanding the climate on Earth, how we can improve it. And we know climate change is a huge concern of the future. So, with your expertise and the knowledge of going forward, how do you see us using all the technologies and experience that we have so far going forward and using that towards bettering life on Earth?
So thank you. First, it's a great pleasure having such a young, charming lady here paired up with from NASA. So what do we, it's a very good question. In fact, if you look into the future, it was Niels Bohr who said once, predictions are very difficult, especially about the future. And I think that's what we are doing. But allow me to really, have the fantasy fly and see what we could do or where we could be in 70 years from today. So what will it be? You mentioned climate change. Of course, climate change is a big issue, even despite all the other crises which we are managing right now. And believe me, it's keeping many of us very busy. Climate change will stay, and the climate question of what happens on our planet will be something that will keep us busy not only for a year or for 5 years, for decades, if not centuries. And this is certainly something that will see a huge transformation. Allow me to be a bit visionary for a moment. Of course, if you put yourself into 70 years is a very long period of time. If you just think backwards to the 50s and compare it to today, you see the leap that you will make in this time. But I would expect that in climate or preserving our planet, sustainability, that the news in the next couple of decades may be bad news. And I still see that we see all these signals of sea level rise, temperature increase, more storms, more intense flooding, all caused by climate change. And I don't think that will change quickly. That will certainly continue for a long period of time. We will have certainly good systems to monitor that. But at some point, when it gets bad enough, if I may say, the evidence will be so clear. I mean, the evidence is clear today, but the people will be so affected by it that there's no choice than to really take very strong action and move, I would say, positively forward. So I would expect maybe 10, maybe 20 years from today, there's some point where a big change will happen in terms of how we tackle our planet and the climate change altogether. Of course, you don't have to convince me, but there's still billions of people who have to be convinced that something urgent has to be done. So what I expect is, of course, at that point when I think this recognition is extremely strong, all efforts will be made to really combat climate change. I think Europe is actually quite advanced in many of these aspects with a very strong carbon neutral policy and transforming many sectors, energy, traffic, transport and so on, to a carbon neutral economy. That this will be 2050, so we are still having 40 years to go. But it's not only that. I think really from a space point of view, you will use all the means of space in a fully integrated way to better understand and simulate our planet in all its aspects. Already today, we are planning something called the digital twin of our planet. Digital twin sounds very futuristic today, but in 70 years it will be common practice, where we combine observations from space with observations from all the other domains, from the atmosphere, the oceans, the land surface, feed Earth system models, of course with all the most modern technologies of algorithms, artificial intelligence, machine learning, or whatever evolution will come in some decades from today, with very high performance computing. Quantum computing for sure will be a very common way of solving problems very quickly, and quantum computing will actually be a huge leap in order to really do quick simulations, because computing power today is a restriction. So you can really simulate first of all, you can understand our planet extremely well. I would say almost every single angle, because you have measurement devices in many places, in mobile phones, of course in big satellites and in other places. You can first of all understand the state of the planet. You can simulate, and what's very, very important, you can do what-if scenarios, what-if calculations. So what happens if I change this? What happens if the carbon dioxide concentration from 400 ppm is going to another value of, I don't know, 10, 20% more? What is the impact on daily life, on sea level rise, but also on people? What does it mean for migration? What does it mean for the economy? What does it mean for really every aspect of life? And I think this simulation capability is extremely important, because their decision makers can then really look at it and say, look, if I do this, this will happen. I can't do that because it's too dangerous for our planet, and I have to do something else. And this will certainly have a much more global dimension, that this information is shared globally. Decisions concerning our planet are certainly done on a global level. I tend to believe for a moment that the crisis, despite all tensions which we see right now, but when it comes to our very own planet, our own soil and air which we are breathing, I think people will get their act together and really address the problems at global level. So yes, I think this capability of simulating our planet, understanding it perfectly, and therefore acting much more forcefully and much stronger, I think is something that I would see coming in the next decades, and certainly at the time of 70 years from today.
Yeah, and you mentioned like a turning point in, when the public kind of gets on board. I'm sure most people in this room believe that the climate's changing, and we understand, the grave impact that it has. So I guess as we start to use like satellites more, and we develop new technologies, and we understand quantum computing and use that, then we'd probably also be able to disseminate that more to the public and get them on board as well. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is exactly what which would need to happen, which I expect to happen, and I think you're absolutely right. I think in this room there's no one doubting that climate change is severe and something has to be done. But I'm not talking about these people here. I'm talking of billions of people somewhere else who are still questioning, or maybe not wanting to take an action that is serious enough. And yes, I think this understanding of the impact which we people have on our very own planet has to penetrate much deeper into society, not only to some, I would say, limited levels. There are different, and if you see the news, there are some movements that are pretty strong today. The Fridays for Future movement in Europe, which is almost becoming global, where young people just say it's enough. We cannot just keep going like this. We have to do something, but it's still not strong enough. There's still much more to be done. You would see sometimes debates between these young people and politicians, or who say yes, or the young people accusing politicians. You're talking about it, but you're not doing it. And I think I still see that we are not, by far not where we should be, in order to really recognize the severity of the problem and really act upon it with all the means we have. And space, for sure, is playing a huge role, because space will allow global observations, global modeling, global recognition of all corners of our planet and help us saving it.
So I guess my next question for you would be, I've helped develop, the Launchpad mentorship program here, and I really want to give like an opportunity for all the early to mid-career professionals a chance to talk with people like you. And so I kind of want to understand, where do you think that the IAF itself could go in terms of supporting climate change, in terms of supporting all like the technological development and getting that out to the general public so that we can have this turn of events and save our world?
But the IAF is playing a huge role, and what you are doing and what the IAF is doing is enormously important, because it creates the possibility, creates spaceships like these ones. It allows astronauts to go there, and something that always impresses me when I speak to astronauts, by the way, we have one sitting right in the midst of us, there are probably some more, but always when astronauts speak about the experience coming back from the space station, and I asked them all the same question. I said, look, what was impressing you most? They all say one thing, which is, it is so beautiful to look from a distance to our planet, but we also realize how fragile our planet is, and we have to do something about it. And therefore, bringing more people to space, to Mars, as we have seen it before, to another vantage point to see what happens down there. Of course, this will not be billions of people, this will be maybe a few hundreds or thousands of people, but actually, one of our astronauts, Alexander Gerst, keeps telling me, he said, look, I'm going there, I have the privilege of seeing that, but actually I wish that every person on this planet could do this once in their life, just to see our planet from a distance and recognize and see what's happening and what needs to be done. And this is, of course, a tremendous experience. And I think more and more people will do that, share this experience with others, and therefore really help making the change that is necessary, because we have only still one planet, and I think this planet will be for centuries the one where most people live. But to the IAF, what you said, the IAF is doing enormously helpful actions, especially with the young people, inspire them and get them on board, and this is incredibly good work, and also your work.
How are we on time?
Let me ask a question.
Okay.
What would you think the IAF should be doing in order to make sure that our planet, we talk about climate change now for a moment, is being preserved? What do you think could be the actions that could be done?
I think it's, kind of along the lines of what you were saying, is just to continue to inspire the young generation, because it's going to take, years and years and decades of work to battle this. And so, I think more scholarship opportunities and constantly telling people who are interested how they can get involved. You can go apply for the Young Space Leader grant. You can go to the Emerging Space Leader grant program. So just having more opportunities to do that and more ways to connect the different generations, which, that's an active thing that's ongoing. I think those two things in particular will be, critical in the future towards continuing this work and keeping it alive.
I also have a request to the IAF, and see Christian sitting there. Many of us, and I'm heading one of these space agencies, but there are several of my colleagues having exactly the same problem, if I may say. We are seeing a huge retirement wave. In ESA, for example, in the next 4 years, we are losing one quarter of our workforce because simply they go on pension. So we need young, talented people to come into ESA or NASA or any other organization, and to make sure that we have this excitement of these people, that they know about what's happening, and to attract these people and make sure that we do have, I would say, a huge stock of very talented, driven, curious people who then become the next generation in our agencies. And what can the IAF do for that? Certainly, I have a request that something needs to be done. I think what you were saying, Elizabeth, is many of these actions that are required. So I really would like to encourage that.
And I think in regard to like that, a lot of people retiring and having like a whole new wave of people, I think one of the critical components is like bridging that gap and, making sure that you don't wait for somebody to completely retire, whether it's a volunteer role or whether it's a technical role, before you find someone to fill it. Being able to train with someone who's been doing the job for 30 plus years, like that really allows for that knowledge transfer and allows for, encouraging great ideas and new ideas is always like a great thing, but we still need to learn like where we came from in order to be able to move forward and not just keep repeating like experiments, for example, and not getting anywhere.
And that's why I think this pairing of young and old, is quite nice, because there you can transfer knowledge, experience, mentorship. And I think it's a very nice idea what you're having here as a setup for this panel.
Thank you very much. I want to just, it was a quite intensive discussion on a very, very important topic. And everybody who has read the 6th assessment report of the IPCC can certainly feel that we are doing too little in order to inform society. And I think this space advocacy, this is something what is really intrinsic to IAF, where we try to get better. And also concerning the younger generation, due to the gracious gift for Blue Origin, we will actually augment the number of space leader grants. And so this is really something which also since the last decade, I remember still when I was at my first IAC, there were not many young people, and it has changed dramatically. And I think this is, we have to continue on this way. And thank you for your suggestion. And we are coming to Maria Antonietta and Pierre Alexis.
The young and
and the experts.
the very young
Middle
and the more experienced guy. No, and I think that is good. It's good. Obviously, we share all the comments that were made by you first. You stole a lot of our many points. But I think that it's important to come back and focus on people. And I think that the two of us, obviously, we met by phone a few days ago to agree how to develop this conversation with Pierre Alexis. And in fact, I started to ask him, because I don't remember precisely every single thing. I've been working for the Federation for decades, when Jim was even younger than today. And as you just said, Pascal, I was one of the very few, maybe one or two, people under 30 years old. And I was, attending the Congress together with my big boss. And I started, and I knew that I really wanted to do something to change it. And in fact, we are a live proof that things can change if people have the will to change things. So in fact, at the telephone, I asked him, but how many years ago did we meet and where? Do you want to share?
Yeah.
Because you are the clear, proof.
And also, we are the last pair, so let's try to conclude by doing
to wrap up.
A link between the past and the future.
Yeah.
So actually, we met the first time in 2010. Mm-hmm. And actually, I started my career at the IAF in 2010. So you can imagine when you are freshly graduated from engineering school, entering the community by meeting all of you, it's a privilege, because I created all my network at the first time. And also,
it was China.
It was Beijing. I will come to that, but that was the time of the presidency of Bernd. And also in the bureau, it was the executive director at that time was your predecessor, Christian, Philip Wilkins, with a great bureau team. I can mention some names that may be familiar to you, with Thomas Etier, Philippe Morel. It was a great team, but today is also a great bureau, and I'm really part of the family. Also, the IAF was in a different location. It was at the 94 bis Avenue de Suffren at that time. Now it moved to 100 Avenue de Suffren, so still in the same area. And yes, you're right, Maria Antonietta. I worked on the first small conference or specific conference, like GLEC this year or GLEC last year. It was GLUC, the Global Lunar Conference. Bernard was the chair of this conference, and that was also the first time I met you, Pascal, in Beijing. So that was a great experience. I think you were there.
I was there as well, not yet in the bureau, but going to be invited to join the bureau by some friends that I see in the audience, because some people already in those days had realized that it was important to open up to women, So I think that Lynn and myself, we were the first two female in the bureau. And it was important to open up to young people. And so in 2008, 2009, with Lynn and Stacy Eddington, we started as 3 moms, almost, to grow up the new kids. And we are very proud moms, because now the new kids are independent. They run the committee by themselves. I still join the teleconferences, but we have chairs that are under 35 years old. They work beautifully. And the important reality is that in every technical and administrative committee, we have a young professional. This is a way to change and to bet on a future that is open to anybody. I cannot avoid sharing with you what I believe that is really important. Yes, the federation is a federation of entities, big companies, agencies, museum, institution, whatever. But the federation is attended by people. And I think that we have huge responsibilities, because we really, also in our pages, we wanted to share with you, yes, for sure, one committee, the exploration committee, will connect with Moonbase, and we will have discussions ongoing via Zoom, connecting, planets. Yes. We have all this projection toward a future, but we have, unfortunately in these days, a clear proof that we can go easily back to the past. So I think that the Federation has a huge responsibility to offer a place, a real place where people can discuss in a professional and open way how to improve the future for the benefit of everybody on this planet to start with.
You're right. And
sorry, that was not planned, but I think that in these days we have a moral obligation to realize that we shouldn't just say blah, blah in words, but act. Yeah. What can the technical committee, for example, do with respect to the future?
For example, since 2010, so when I worked at the IAF, I still joined technical committee, but also in the last 12 years, I attended 9 ICs. So I don't know in the room if people attended more in the last 20 years, but I guess yes, because I don't know if you can raise your hand if you did a lot. I think Bernard, of course, and of course.
We want to involve people in the audience, so that's why it's boring.
It's really important, because once you are in, I think you are part of a family, and yes, you keep going, because what motivates you is actually your passion. So you are not here because you need to be here. You are here because it's about your passion. So I agree. Oops.
And we also spoke about education.
And I benefited a lot also about, in my case, about all what you did. I think it was mentioned, the grant Emerging Space Leader, the YPP stream of the IAC, also the 3G agenda done by Jean-Yves was very important, and I think it's going to be continued. I know Clay is close to support startups, commercial initiative, and that's another way to support young professional involvement in space. So now, going back to the technical committee, I think the IAF role is really unique, and we talk all a lot about international collaboration. But technical committees, for me, in the future, might be the place where we are going to discuss about standards between us, alignment of program as well. We would welcome also new entrants. There are many companies today that are involved in space, that are space or non-space, but are not yet in those committees. That's really the place where it's
I agree with you. And it's also important to educate the new citizen, really to provide an education. It was mentioned by maybe Clay, or I don't remember. It's important to provide an education that develop open-minded people. The future is, how can I say, more and more. I know, I'm coming to ISU, The future is evolving super fast, and everything is super interconnected. So I think that if we want to understand each other, for sure we need super experts in specific fields, but we need to have people that have a common lexicon, people that can understand each other. And so if I am an engineer, but I learn a little bit of economy, a little bit of legal aspect, you mentioned, Deganit, maybe I will understand better your reasoning. And I think that the Federation can offer this type of approaches. Not only Christian, we shall tell that to each of us is in a technical committee. We have the responsibility to propose a little bit modern type of discussions within our committees.
Great, thank you. Now it's over to you. We wanted, of course, to leave some time for questions from the audience. And I know that somebody will swirl around with a microphone. Yes? And please raise your hand if you have questions. Yeah? And we will see who answers.
It is our question. Everyone who is older in here was younger when he was inspired to go to space. Not an old man does that. Youngsters do that. And this means every one of you was younger, and it's life with getting you older. That's the only thing about the age difference. The major question for me is, how do we want to shape our future? We have all the experts in space in this room, all the knowledge, and we should talk about what is our idea of a roadmap into space, into future for this planet, what we are going to do in our solar system, not only thinking about taking something in our piggyback and then have a little space flight up to a space station. If we want to go into the solar system, we need recycle systems. We are off this place for many, many years. And if we understand how this functions, we also know what we have to do on Earth to keep Earth with all the problems we created and Earth itself created into a proper format that we can live. We only have this place. And who else than IAF should be able to say what the way of the future should be, instead of waiting for some politicians, instead of waiting what directors a new idea comes off. We can be and we should be the director of our future in space. We have the capacity and we have the knowledge and we have the dreams and ideas in this room. And this should be something what's coming from IAF, because we got the knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you. And Josef would like to answer.
I can start, but I'm sure there's many people having a lot to answer, because your question is a very important one, it's a very fundamental one. But I've actually asked this very question to some key people, I call them wise people, when I took up the job as DG of ESA a year ago. And one of the first fundamental questions I had is, of course, what should ESA do or what should Europe do in space? But this is very global, because the problems and the issues are, of course, very similar in other places of the world. So what I did is I invited a few politicians who are not anymore active, but who know space extremely well, so science ministers, but also people from private business and institutions. And but they really know this, I'm not mentioning the names now, but they really know the landscape extremely well. And they have said a few very important things to me, and actually we have translated this into programs and ways forward. One is, of course we are all space people here, but they reminded me and us, be careful that you are the one who is talking what you want or what you should be doing as space agency. Ask the users, ask the people what they need and listen to them. What is the priority of people and citizens? And of course we say yes, of course, but this is really so important. And then we went one level down. So what is important for you, for users and people? And then we boil it down to the same questions we just debated. Climate change. Climate change is a fundamental issue of everyone on this planet. Number two, security. And this was a year ago. I don't need to remind everyone what security means today, but security in case of crisis or in case of disasters, it could be flooding, fires, storms, or other crises which are of much more geopolitical nature, like we see them right in front of our door here, not very far from this place here. So security of people is extremely important. And then they said, and then comes your space angle, because you are space people, and these were not space people, the ones I was asking, and they said, look, but you have to inspire people. This is part of what space can do so well, inspiring people. Of course, NASA has done it in the 60s with the Apollo mission, bringing people to the moon, and many others have done it. But if you want to, you have to inspire people so to get young generations going into technology, informatics, and so on. And we proposed, after long discussions and deep discussions and a lot of research what makes sense and what doesn't, something called an icy moon mission. And give me 1 minute what this means. There's a fundamental question of people, is there life out there? Is there life somewhere outside this planet Earth? And of course everyone wants to know. And they say, look, if you want to know whether there's life outside our planet Earth, the best possible place, and this is what exobiologists are saying, is an icy moon of the outer solar system, of Saturn or Jupiter. There are some of these icy moons, Europa, Enceladus, and similar ones. So if you could launch a spacecraft, go fly there, of course today it takes 10 years to go there, go onto the icy moon surface, drill into the ice cover, because under the ice there is water and there's an ice cover, drill in there and take a sample from this icy moon, from Enceladus for example, bring it back up to the spaceship, back to the Earth, through the atmosphere, and analyze what you see there. And if you see no life, then that's one answer. If you see some kind of life, maybe very primitive, very simple, the first question is, does it have a DNA? And is the DNA the same as ours, or a very different one? If it's the same, of course, that answers a very fundamental question. If it's a different one, that's another answer that you get. So this inspiration to create these inspiring missions, that's also part of space agencies, what we should be doing to create these dreams or these impossible achievements which we want to make and to do. And this is also part of our portfolio. To come to sum it up, what we did actually as a consequence is to define so-called accelerators and inspirators. There are 3 accelerators, 2 inspirators who are doing exactly that, to really look at the needs of people, very fundamental needs of people, but also inspire our population.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Pierre Alexis?
I think your question is also about entrepreneurship, and when people take initiative, how the Federation can support this initiative. And I think it's something that the IAF should also look in the future. Is already doing that in the IAC with some session. We discuss that also with Deganit, and that will be in the agenda also of CLE. But you're right, the IAF is a great network. You got all the capabilities, all the competencies. You just need to open up for the people that are taking those initiatives. So entrepreneurship is very important, and the IAF will look at it also in the future.
And I believe that we are already doing some step forward. There are technical committees that are taking seriously major aspects. For example, to the benefit of our planet, the problem of debris, the problem of cleaning orbits, So there are tens of people that are working in that direction, not only during the Congress. We handle technical discussion all the year through, and we try to publish positioning papers. Yeah.
Please don't think for the next 20, for the next 70 years. We need space infrastructure.
We need to
And,
get
and all that
resources.
kind of things. We need mining in space instead on Earth. All those things are part of it. And we should give also to those questions an answer, not only for the next 5, 10, 30, 40 and more years.
For sure.
Thank you.
Just a very quick response to that, fully agree. I think one big problem we see now, especially in Europe, is energy supply. And actually, there are some projects already dating back to the 50s, 60s, who have not been materialized, which is solar power from space. Yeah. And I think sooner or later this will be happening.
There is a technical committee here working on that topic for decades. Leopold Sammerer and other people.
I just realized that you hoarded all the microphones here, and they are on this side. They were all completely desperate, you know. And I was just wondering why is it so silent over there. Yeah. So we have one more on this side. Yeah. Sorry, that was a slight oversight. I know we have a few minutes to wrap up, but at this moment, I have to say something about our committees. These are voluntary committees. We have many of them, and they address many of the topics which we have discussed, be it space and society, be it human space exploration, be it space exploration, as Maria Antoinetta mentioned, and a lot of Earth observations. I see people here in the room which are leading these committees, and they are doing really an incredible work, and we have just right now with 14 working groups, a project on space traffic management, which will be done together. That's also an important point with other institutions, namely with the International Institute of Space Law and also with the International Academy of Astronautics, so working with other organizations in order to combine forces to look at such a global important power. And I think there will be a paper which will be presented at the ISC in 2022 in Paris. So we are doing that, but I just wanted to really say something about the committees and thank the committee members, because it's a voluntary work and it is really coming from enthusiasm about space and wanting to help further. Is there any dramatic question? Oh my God. Christian is not happy, but please make it short, and we are taking this side now.
First of all, thank you for bringing up climate. It's a topic that is very dear to my heart, but I'm not going to ask a question about that. I will catch up later with that. I have a maybe shocking question in the sense that if there is at the moment anything amazing happening, I would say that is maybe SpaceX, Elon Musk. So my question is very simple. What can the IAF and ESA do to work together with Mr. Musk to truly accelerate the pace of development that he's been achieving? Thank you.
And the question goes to Clay.
I guess the question goes to me. So by the way, it's a fantastic question. It really is. And it's something, having been in industry and watching SpaceX emerge over the past, for more than a decade now that they've been flying to space, they really have shown a different model, really, a different model, both if you look at their approach from a technical standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, from a systems engineering standpoint. They've taken a very much some people describe it, and not my words, but fail forward, right? They're willing to go out to try to fail and then succeed. They're willing to take a lot of risk, a lot more risk than the traditional sector of the aerospace business. Because, by the way, sometimes you're a publicly traded company and you can't afford to have that. So in some ways, they have a privileged position of not being publicly traded, of having the backing of Musk and many of its investors, and having, and he tells this story a lot about having failed 3 times and then finally to achieve, which is not common in business. It's not common for sure with space agencies. So it is a completely different model. But to your point, how do we attract these guys? Why don't we have SpaceX people here right now? There's none on the panel. And they are perhaps the most dynamic part of the industry right now. So it is certainly something we should address and solve and try to bring them in. We've certainly had Elon come and speak. We have people from SpaceX that are involved, I know, in a lot of levels, but maybe we need to do something more to bring them in and talk a little bit about their approach and how they've succeeded.
I see that Christian is sitting like this, yeah, on his chair. I've worked with him 3 years. I know very fast.
So I'll be as brief as possible. In a previous panel, on this panel, we've seen that the space industry from very specific sectors have grown, has widened, has become more interdisciplinary. Yet I think I speak for most of us here that we are, well, caught by the space bug. We love space. But over the recent years, you've seen, and Mr. Aschenbacher was addressing it, the users, space is becoming more intertwined everywhere in society, where space is just a part of a bigger system. What can the IAF do in the next 20 years, next 70 years, to also include those that don't have that space bug, but use the space asset to become involved?
See, since I have really to wrap up this session, may I just say, Space for All, it starts in Paris in September 2022. It is exactly this topic, and CNES and IAF has in particular worked on the model to bring the space sector and the non-space sector together, and is working hard on this thing. So this is the start. I have to wrap up because I know the eyes are starting to, because we have a very, very beautiful also ceremony which is coming ahead. First, I want to thank all the speakers here, young and old, experienced, distinguished. Yeah? Huh? Senior. And I really want to thank you for this open exchange, and just we have seen that climate change is a very important entrepreneurship, moving into the future in a multi-stakeholder approach. I think we have very, very good possibilities and opportunities to continue, but we have to take and we have to evolve with the dynamically evolving space sector. And I think IAF will try that. And when I give the torch to Clay, he certainly thinks exactly the same. So we will have to move in the future until 2091 and beyond. But climate change is something, I think, which came out in many things, is something which will determine our future. And that we might actually eventually, that's how we started, have to live off the land at one stage. And so I just want to thank you very much that you have been listening to us. There is a big ceremony coming ahead, which is moderated by Christian. And I hope you are a part of the IAF in the future. We count on you, and we thank you very, very much for all your help and your partly voluntary work and your enthusiasm and being a part of the IAF family. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, this was an exciting panel. It was kind of, when we started to brainstorm how we are going to go along with this panel, we were not sure that that works out with the pairs of young generation versus, or together with, paired with senior experts, but I think this is something that we will certainly pursue. What I take from this is certainly the focus on, for the next 70 years, climate change. And I like very much what Josef Aschbacher said about the development of the ability to do reliable simulations of what if. I think this for me is something that is really an inspirational target for the experts in the future. What has also been mentioned here is space for all, connecting all space people. It is actually in the middle of our motto, and that summarizes really bringing everybody in, connecting the young generation with the senior experts, bringing in new communities, emerging and developing communities. And last but not least, the question of inspiration. I take it also up as one of our goals in the future as part of our outreach to the young generation, to the general public, to work on inspirational aspect. We cannot do it alone. We need you. You are the source of inspiration for so many young people, as you are role models, as you can really give the message out. And unfortunately, our very inspirational pictures, we have started already, as you see, is gone already. But I think inspiration is something very important. Now, it is my pleasure, of course, to move to the last point of this first part of today's program, and that is to recognize those who have served the Federation tireless for years. Our former presidents and our former and present vice presidents and current president, of course, as well. We are pleased to award them with very special medals. And I would like to ask our president to come up on stage again to award these medals. We would start, you see them here. For our IAF vice presidents, we are very pleased to award you with the Silver Recognition Medal. And I would like to call up on stage. Again, we try to do this in a chronological way and start with Gerhard Hofmark. I think you are the oldest serving vice presidents in the room.
Do that like at the Olympic Games, yeah? Yeah? So. Yeah, yeah.
I saw Sir Martin before. Yes, he's coming up here. And you see, Sir Martin Sweeting was vice president from 2000 to 2004. Next is Anne-Marie Mengui. You see, she was vice president from 2004 and 2008 as well. I'm already asking to get ready, Gerard Brachet, for the next. With us. Gerard Brachet is next. Vice President from 2008 to 2012. Maria Antonietta, please. Her term 2010 to 2014. Next to come up is Jan Collard. Vice President of the IAF from 2012 and to 2016. Next we have John Borak. Vice President from 2014 to 2016. Next is Gabriela Arrigo. Her term from 2017 to 2020. And our next Vice President to be awarded is Minu Ratnasapapati. I have learned to express this very difficult name. Her term from 2018 to 2021. So that's actually with all of, no, stay here, the former vice presidents. Now we move to the present vice presidents, and we start with Anthony Tsoukranis, who has been elected 2020, serving to 2023. Next, Andreas Lindenthal. So, next, Deganit Bajkowski, please. Steve Eisenhardt is our next Vice President. Davide Petrillo. And last but not least, Lionel Souchet. And now we move to the second row in front for our former president, who will be awarded with our gold medal, and these gold medals are very special because they are really with your name and your term as well. And I'm pleased to start again with Karl Wirtsch. But here I need to say something special, because Karl was not only president but also vice president, and therefore he will get 2 medals, the silver and the gold medal. There is a lot to carry home, huh? Will hang only the gold medal, or will he? Karl, congratulations. And the silver as well. Karl was also vice president, so you need to get 2. So maybe we put the president somewhere in the middle. We squeeze them in. Now, Jim Zimmerman. Gold medal for his presidency from 2004 to 2008. Jean-Yves Le Gall. I think I saw him just 5 minutes ago. Okay. Then I need to get 2 more medals now. You hold this. Because this is for our president. So it is now my pleasure to hang the gold medal for your presidency on you. But Pascal was also vice president before, so she gets also a second. Congratulations. And of course, we don't stop here. Where's Clay? Clay, incoming president. And you know, he has been vice president before. He's incoming president, and in order to give this kind of a credit before already, you get also both, the silver and the gold one. Pascal, please. So please, now group picture. Try to get somehow in the picture. This is most probably the most comprehensive gathering of former and present bureau members we ever had. Thank you very much, and once again, congratulations. I thank you all for being with us for this first part, and our second part of this event, our gala dinner, will start at 8 o'clock in this same room. Please come back to us a few minutes before. Thank you very much.